Is there any proof, logical proof for the coming of Moshiach? We know that there's 13 principles of faith, and the 12th of those 13 principles is the belief in the coming of Moshiach. Regarding the other principles of faith, obviously we call them principles of faith because primarily it comes from the level of faith which transcends understanding. But together with that, we have many sfar and many commentaries who explain how we can use understanding to augment, to complement, to try to bring some type of support for these principles of faith. When it comes to the principle of believing in Moshiach, there's a sefer written by the Mabit, Beis Elokim, Shara Yisei this Perek. He explains there, he goes through all the 13 principles of faith and he explains different arguments, so to say, or some type of logical perspective they could give to support the previous principles of faith. When it comes to the belief in the coming of Moshiach, he says this is a very difficult principle to try to prove logically because we're dealing something exclusively in the realm of the future. Regarding other principles of faith, for example, prophecy, or the giving of the Torah, things like that, there are events that happen in the past, or at least certain logical things, logical arguments that could be persuasive, that could prove that these things are true. When it comes to the coming of Mashiach, seemingly it's all regulated purely in the realm of faith, the tradition. We were promised the coming of Mashiach in the Torah by the prophets, and we accept it to be true. But is there any way of proving that it's actually going to happen from a, so to say, logical, intellectual perspective? So he says that despite the difficulty we could of trying to find logical proofs, we could find a few points to explain even logically. First of all, if we believe that the world was created by Hashem, and the world was created for a purpose, then it's clear that there has to come a time that that purpose will be fulfilled. That's a simple equation. If we really truly believe that the world was created for a purpose, obviously the purpose, the way the world is now, the world is not living up to its purpose. There must come a time when the world will eventually live up to its purpose, that godliness will be revealed, that all humankind will live in peace and harmony with each other, they'll all serve God together. So this is a very simple, basic, religious, whatever you want to call it, but some type of logical, at least from a religious perspective, to believe in the coming of Mashiach. Furthermore, another idea, another logical thing he focuses on, that there were many predictions that were given in the Torah and spoken about our sages. All of those predictions came true. For example, there's many predictions regarding the Ikvus of the Mashiach, the period right before Mashiach comes, the moral deterioration that will take place, the ethical and moral load that will happen at that time, and all materialized. So if all these predictions came true, it's logical to assume that the same way, it's logical to accept that the same way all the predictions regarding the exile, regarding the harshness of exile, regarding the moral load that will happen before Mashiach comes came true. So then we should assume that the other parts of the prophecies as well, obviously, will happen, will become manifest, will become true. There's another point that other Sfarim point out, which is that one proof, so to say, we could bring is from the fact that the Jewish people survived during exile. According to all logical, all human calculations, the Jewish people, the minority being severely persecuted for thousands of years, should have long perished, should have long ago been in the dustbins of history. The fact that we survived despite all odds must mean that there's a destiny that we have. What is the destiny of the Jewish people? The destiny of the Jewish people will be realized with the coming of Mashiach, when then the Jewish people will be a light unto the nations that will teach the world about Hashem. So the fact itself that we look at the exile, a person could say, hey, we were in 2,000 years in exile, it must be Mashiach is not coming. Look, exile is taking so long. But if you really think about it, it's an argument for it's a counter argument. It's an argument for the other way around. The fact that the Jewish people survived the exile, despite the fact that it made no sense that they would survive, must mean that we have a destiny which is not exile. The exile is just a preparation for a destiny which is eternal, which is why the Jewish people are eternal, which is the bringing of godliness, which is eternal, into this world. So this is another idea that we could ponder if we try to internalize intellectually the belief in the coming of Mashiach. These are different points that we could focus on. There's one last point, which in other commentaries discuss more from a mystical perspective, which is also something that the sages point out, that all the future predictions we find are already embedded in nature in some way, shape, or form. The famous story in the Gemara about a certain sage that said that when Moshiach will come, the earth will give ready-made bread and the earth will produce ready-made garments. And a certain student laughed at him. He quoted the verse that says, "There's nothing new under the sun." So he went out and he showed him mushrooms. Mushrooms are obviously not bread, but mushrooms represent in a small way how nature itself provides something overnight. And he also showed him that around palm trees is a certain fiber that grows from which you can make clothes. He's trying to point out to him that everything, all the future predictions, we have the Hashem already set up that it's embedded in nature. And as it's explained in many sources, the truth is that a lot of the things in the future, the world is returning to its inherent nature the way it was before the sin of the tree of knowledge, which then we know that the nature of the world was on a much higher level. So all these things are already embedded in nature, and Hashem should help that we should merit the coming of Moshiach, and we should experience all the future revelations exactly as they were prophesied by our prophets speedily nowadays. Take it from the Yad Mamish.